Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back. This video is going to be just talking about my experience. It has been requested that I speak on the hurricane heats that Spartan puts on. And so I'm just gonna kind of discuss what my experience was. I did my first one 2 weeks ago, and it was the 12-hour hurricane heat. Spartan puts on a 4-hour, a 12-hour, and a 24-hour hurricane heat. Like I mentioned, I only did one, and it was the 12-hour. And the 4-hour is apparently more team-based. The 12-hour that we did was like part team and mostly individual. So keeping that in mind as I go through my experience with it, use that to your discretion if you are thinking about signing up for one. The hurricane heat is pretty much completely different than your typical Spartan race videos that I've been posting. It's not as much like a competition or a race. You're not like constantly running and just doing obstacles. It is, for lack of better terms, a real personal growth mechanism, I guess you could say. It is designed to push you physically and mentally. For me personally, it pushed me to my physical and mental limits. During the 12-hour period, it was between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and you're in the pitch black at 3 a.m. in the woods and having to carry something and you just want to quit. But, you know, for me personally, if I decide to do something, I want to see it all the way through. But it really pushes you to your breaking point and really helps you figure out how to find that extra drive deep down. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So starting off, Spartan gives you a list of items that they require per the venue. So each venue is apparently different. So what I experienced in Atlanta for the 12-hour may not be exactly what you experience in Charlotte for the 12-hour, or I think there's one in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure. But the venues may change. So my specific experiences may not translate, but the overall gist you should be able to get an idea of. So in our items list, the main thing that I'm pretty sure will stay the same is we had 7-foot PVC pipes, and that was there mostly to ensure social distancing. So what we did was we had the 7-foot pipes and then we marked them midway. And so when we were carrying them, had the poles midway, so that kind of ensured that the person in front of you, if they're carrying theirs midway, their back half is 3.5 feet, and then my front half is 3.5 feet. So put those together and we're 7 feet apart. So that was the main thing, which added a real challenge to the whole thing because you're also having to carry weights and all that kind of stuff. So in addition to these PVC pipes, it's just made things a little bit harder. Another big glaring challenge for me was carrying the ruck pack. It was my first time really doing like a weighted exercise or anything like that. So they required the men for this one to have 30 pounds. I saw that a lot of people had like actual, it looked like steel flat plates. I had regular old like barbell weights in mine. I'm not sure what the difference is, maybe how the load is secured on you or something like that. But I know for me, mine sat real low, and so it kind of hurt my back. But I mean, pretty much the entire 12 hours, except for maybe the last hour, hour and a half, we had to wear those bags. So just keep that in mind as you are considering to do this in the future. Aside from those two main things, the kind of knick-knack things they wanted on our item list is probably going to vary. So I'm not even going to really go through my list there. As I go through the individual tasks that we had to complete, I'll mention some. But starting off, the first thing that I recommend is you have everything on that list. Double, triple, quadruple check and make sure you have everything. One thing that I screwed up on, they require waivers, and I initially thought there were only 2, but when I got to the venue, there was actually 3. And if you forget something, they make you pay. And I had to pay with burpees, but then I also got marked, like physically marked with a marker on my shirt. And then you become a target for the rest of the night. And trust me, that is something you do not want. but I had to get a waiver there, and so that automatically put a target on my back. So make sure you have all 3 waivers and all the items on that list, because they will go through a checklist when you are there, and make sure you have everything. And trust me, if you have to do burpees or anything extra, that's extra energy that you will need to get through this event. Another note that they gave us at the very beginning, they said that the 12-hour event is different than the 4-hour event in that there is no finisher medal. You earn your medal at the end. And they warned us, they said not everybody here, I believe we had about, I want to say 26, maybe 27 people throughout the whole event that are, going through it. And they said some of you all are not going to finish. You're not going to get the medal. You're not going to get the t-shirt at the end. This event is really here to push you and motivate you, and we don't just give out awards for this. So they didn't really tell us what the requirements were. And so I'm kind of wary to tell you guys, because since I didn't know, that was really a motivating factor for me. But basically, you get points for completing the tasks that they give you. They keep track of points by giving you like hair bands or little bands that you put on your wrist and wear around. You want to get as many points as you can. I'm not going to tell you what the threshold was for us. Granted, it's probably different in each venue anyway, but I'm still not going to tell you, because I don't want you to get complacent and think that, oh, well, I have enough now with 4 hours to go, I can kind of coast. You really need to just give it your all in every task that they give you, from 6 p.m. to 5:45 a.m. or whatever your time is. You want to do the best you can, not only to secure your finishing, but just to feel the pride of knowing that you really pushed your limits and did the best that you could do throughout the entire night. So once we started, we did a PR fitness test, and that's just basically do as many sit-ups, push-ups, squats. We did like a 1.5 mile run, just as many as you can in a certain amount of time. So you'll start out with that. I think that's pretty standard across the board. And then we get into, they split us up into teams, and then we get into the actual task. Oh, let me go back. One thing that I will tell you that will get you automatically DQ'd is if you do not complete a task. They told us at the very end that you have to have the X amount of points and you have to have completed everything. I had a really good friend of mine that killed the entire night. She had like 12 points, which was well over the threshold. I'm giving you a little hint there. But unfortunately, she got lost on the last run, and she didn't make it back to the checkpoint in time to do 2 of the last missions that we had to do. And so unfortunately that disqualified her. She didn't get the finisher bag, and she was devastated, and rightly so. I mean, she worked really hard the entire night, but they were really sorrowful, but they said, we hate to do this, but we have rules, and it's really to kind of demonstrate that everything's not always handed to you. Life isn't always fair, but I'll get into that at the very end. So we split up into teams, and at this particular venue, we had a pond that we kind of went to, and one of our items that we had to have was an empty 5-gallon bucket. And so we get to the pond, and as a team, we're kind of competing against the other teams. Our first task was to do water burpees, which are just, you go into the pond about ankle deep, and then do 10 burpees. And then they told us to fill our shoe with pond muck and fill up our 5-gallon buckets as much as we can within a given amount of time. So we do that until they tell us to stop, and the winning team got to take a break. The second team had to take a lap around the pond, and then third place team, my team, we had to take 2 laps around the pond. Keeping that in mind, give it your all even when you're in a team, especially when you're in individual events, but really help your team out. Don't go and half-ass anything just because you're tired. Keep in mind that the energy and the well-being of your teammates is kind of on your shoulders as well, so give it all you got. One thing that I will say, and this will be an underlying theme throughout the night, do what they tell you. Don't go overboard. So what I mean by that is, if they give you a task, just do exactly what they say. I'll get into a specific instance later on, but don't overthink it and just do exactly what they say. So we finish filling our buckets, we got last, so we move on to the next task, which was filling up sandbags with rocks. For this particular task, we had a spoon, and we were able to put one rock, however big a rock we could get to fit in our spoon, and then if it fits, we can put it in our hand and then put another rock, so we can have up to 2 rocks at a time. And we had to fill up our bags as much as we could as a team again. And fortunately for us, we got first place. I didn't really know ahead of time, but I had a spoon, and it was like a big pot stirring spoon instead of just a little teaspoon or tablespoon. So take that with a grain of salt. I think the bigger spoon is an advantage, but maybe, I don't know, we had the crazy idea that maybe they made us eat like a spoonful of something, and so having a huge spoon there would be a clear disadvantage. So just take that as you will, but keep that in mind. I think a spoon is kind of a standard item across whatever venue it is. So we get through that, and keep in mind, this is a 12-hour event. There's really no breaks aside from if your team wins or if you're doing an individual event and you finish pretty quickly and you're having to wait for everybody else. So just keep that in mind. After that, we had another team building event where we had to put a jigsaw puzzle together, except we all had like 5 or 6 pieces. By this time it was very dark, and so we only had headlamps to kind of light the puzzle, and they don't give you the thing to look at initially. So you have one member of your team trying to describe the picture of what the puzzle is to the rest of your team. And ours was, excuse my language, but it was a shit show. We had a very hard puzzle. I mean, even if I was doing a puzzle by myself, it would take me at least an hour, and it was only like a 100-piece puzzle, but it was just the difficulty of the puzzle. But eventually they did allow, if there was a member on our team that was constantly doing burpees, we could have the picture on our table to kind of go by as a reference. But our team got way last place. I mean, the other 2 teams finished before we even had our border done. It was just that difficult. But anyways, so we had penalty laps on that. After that, that kind of ended the team portion of the night. If I had to guess, it was probably 11 or 12, 11 p.m. or midnight. And then they sent us back to our rocks that we just filled up the bags with. And they told us to tie up our bags, create a yoke carry. That's just carrying the bars on your back with the weights. And so we had to create a yoke carry out of our 7-foot PVC pipes and the bags. One instance of doing exactly what they tell you to do instead of overthinking it. They never told us how far out the bags need to be. So obviously the further out on your yoke carry, the harder it is, number one, on the PVC pipes, they may break, and number 2, to steady the weight, and it's just harder to carry. So instead of overthinking it and asking them questions, do not ask them to clarify or anything like that. Once they give you a task, you just do it. So instead of asking, I put my bags very close to my shoulders. They said, we gave you a list of tools to bring, use whatever tools you have to strap those suckers on and get moving. And then they told us, you just go up here, take a right, and you'll run into one of our team members that will be waiting for you to give you your first point. But caveat, they don't tell you how far. Keep in mind, this is like midnight, pitch black, we're in the woods. So I strap mine up really quickly, and I'm the first one out the gate. I'm going down this trail. Granted, I mean, it's a trail. For this particular part, it's very hard to get lost. It's a very clear trail, and I'm going. And I'm going, and I'm going, and I get to where I'm all by myself. Just me, my headlamp, pitch black. There's a river running next to us, and she told us to kind of use that as a guide, keep it on our right, and just keep going. And I'm going, and I'm going. I have huge, heavy weights on my shoulders. I have the ruck pack, keep that in mind. I have my own water supply, my own food supply with me at all times, so that is added weight as well. I'm going, and I'm not seeing anything. I start to get a little bit nervous that, I missed something. Maybe there was a turn that I missed or something, but eventually there was a girl that caught me. I have no idea. She just came blistering by me, and I had a really good head start. So whoever that was, props to you, because that was, pretty good. So she kept going. I just figured if she kept going, I'll just kind of follow her coattails, and hopefully if we're lost, we'll get lost together and deal with it when we figure that out. But we kept going, and eventually it was legit about 1.5 miles later, we run into this guy. And when I tell you 1.5 miles of, I was walking, so it took that much time, but with that much weight on you, it was very hard. And this was kind of right out the gate as far as the individual events go. So I'm getting nervous that, you know, I may not last throughout the whole night. So we get there and he's like, okay, go back. So we had 1.5 miles there and then 1.5 miles back. We finally finished. Luckily it was in the top 4, I think. So I had a little bit of downtime to kind of catch my breath, reorganize my stuff, because by that time, you know, my bag's sagging. I'm able to tighten it back up and rearrange the stuff in my bag to try to disperse the weight, because that becomes a big issue later on in the night. The downtime that I have, I'm just waiting for more people to come, but the people that were coming after me, you know, they had shorter time to catch their breath and stuff like that, because right when that last person, that cutoff that they give us comes in, we're off to do the next thing. That's pretty much the theme of the night. There is no real downtime. So our next task was to create survivor knot bracelets. I don't have mine with me, but they give you, it's kind of a how well do you follow instruction task. Luckily, it also kind of doubled as a breather. They give you a sheet of the directions, and it's pretty step-by-step on how you create the knots. It was apparently very, very difficult for a lot of people. I can't think of the actual term for the lead lady that did it, but I'm just gonna call her the leader. Our leader was showing us as well as going through the step-by-step directions. So I was able to follow along pretty well. So I was able to knock mine out pretty quick. So I was second or third one done with that. So with that, I was able to, you know, further catch my breath while we waited on everybody else. But then after that, like I said, as soon as they cut it off, we're off to the next task. That kind of falls into do the best you can at all times, because if you can finish before everybody else, that gives you that extra break. They do give you like a 5-minute period every now and then. They have like restrooms that you can run to. At our particular venue, they had an area where we could refill our water bottles, give you a quick minute to eat something and get your nutrition down. Side note on that, definitely eat. I didn't really feel that hungry throughout the night, but I did eat a little bit anyway. Looking back at it now, I wish I ate a little bit more just to kind of get me through to the end, because I really started gassing out really bad at the very end. So once you kind of figure out, all I had was the Uncrustable peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I had a couple of protein bars and like electrolyte powders and stuff. I wish I'd have ate a little bit more of that stuff throughout the night, just to try to sustain energy, because like I said, you're constantly moving, you're constantly burning calories. It was very hot and humid in Atlanta when we did this, so that added to that. So you're constantly rehydrating and things like that. So just keep that in mind whenever you are out there and you're not really feeling hungry. Feed your body anyway. So we go to the next task, which was to find our buckets full of muck. We had to do a couple menial tasks like carrying it, burpees with it, and that kind of stuff. And then we had to carry it straight up a mountain. And I mean 1 mile of a very steep incline, very little zigzagging. You know how you would kind of zigzag up a mountain? This was, obviously, I mean, it was in Atlanta, so it's not gonna be like a rocky mountain or something that you would encounter in the Northeast, but it was still a very steep incline for me. Carrying your poles, carrying your ruck bag, and then carrying this bucket that you just filled as much as you could for your team up a mountain. And that was probably my turning point. I was having a really good time up till then. I came in third from last place on that. I had to stop constantly. It was killing my back. I had to figure out a game plan with my pipes, because I just couldn't physically. I had to carry both pipes with one hand and the bucket in another, and I was constantly having to switch buckets. I mean, because my bucket was really, really heavy, so I was having to constantly switch hands with the bucket because I was getting tired on one side. So I eventually put my pipes like in my straps of my backpack with my rug plate in it, or with my weights in it. And so my pipes were sticking out, so nobody would, social distance, so nobody would come next to me. But it freed up my hands to where I could hold the bucket like in a bear hug, which made a huge difference for me. But still, it was a very difficult task, but we finally get to the top. I missed out on a couple bonus points because I was so far behind. Apparently, those that finished early were able to do a couple laps to get bonus points, bonus bands for the end. But once we get to the top, another rule or whatever, I guess you could say, that they gave us was you can dump out your bucket, but you have to dump it on yourself. Well, thinking logically, they don't specify, so I didn't ask. So I was dumping it on my shoe. That's technically a part of myself. I was dumping it on my leg and my shoe. And after I did that, somebody asked, do you mean dump it on our head? Well, of course, they were like, yeah, absolutely, dump it on your head. But up until that point, they can't, if they don't specify, they can't dock you for it because you didn't dump it on your head and you had it dumped out on your foot already because you followed their rules. So just keep that in mind. Do not ask questions. Do not make this harder on yourself. So they had to dump, after that fact, they had to dump like pond muck, and it smelled disgusting. They had to dump that on their head and finish the rest of the night like that. So I can't stress that enough. Don't overthink it. After that, we had to go back down to the mountain to this field area, and then we had to do a series of different traverses. One was like a bear crawl. One was like a somersault roll. What else we had? We had to do like drags. So like you had to drag your ruck bag, or kind of toss it in front of you, bear crawl to it, toss it in front of you, bear crawl to it. And if I had to guess the distances that we had to go, I would have to guess like 50 yards. I mean, it was really far, maybe not that much, maybe 35, but it was really far, especially to bear crawl that much with your weight. That was my least favorite part because like I didn't realize that I should have taken like a crappy bag. I have my nice bag that I take to all my Spartan stuff, and it has my patches and stuff on it. So I was like slinging my bag and whatnot. It tore my patches off. I lost a couple of the buttons that were on it. So I was pretty bummed about that. But by then, I was exhausted. I wasn't performing well in that. You had like my friend that got disqualified. She was killing it. She made like 2 or 3 laps in the time that they gave us. I made like 1.5. And so each lap you got points. So it was very important that you do as much as you can, as hard as you could go, to get the points to finish, or graduate is what they called it. But we get through all of those tasks, and the last thing, I believe it was around 5 a.m. 5 a.m. at this point, and they told us we have to do it all over again. And what I mean by that is they allowed us to take off our ruck bags, but we had to run the same trail that we took with the yoke bags, and then we had to go up the same mountain that we had with the bucket carry. We were a little bit further for the trail, so that kind of equated into a 5K. So just to get to the turning point to go up the mountain was around, I don't know, probably about 2 miles, a little over 2 miles. And then adding the climb up the mountain was definitely at least a mile. So it was actually over a 5K all said and done. But we take off. I'm a pretty decent runner, especially without the ruck bag. Like I said, that ruck bag made a huge difference for me. I wasn't comfortable with it. I wasn't used to it. But we take off running. I'm in the top 5 in that as well until we get to the point where we have to go up the mountain. We do have to carry our poles with us, but fortunately for me, once we started getting up the mountains, I just started using them as walking sticks. Like I said, this is 5 a.m. We've been going constantly all night long, so that's 11 hours. I was completely gassed. It started spacing out. The head group in front of me started taking off. My friend that got disqualified actually caught up to me, and I was able to follow her for a while, but she eventually got a second wind and took off and left me. And I got to the point again where there was enough space between the group in front of me and the group behind me where all I could really see is very small, dim lights from their headlamps behind me, and I couldn't see anything in front of me. That's where I got to the place mentally where I was like, is this really something that I want to do? Is this something that I want to finish? I was so mentally broken at that point that You know, I really strongly considered quitting. I guess, fortunately for me, my mom actually took me and dropped me off, so I had no way home. I had no cell phone. I was in the middle of the woods on the side of this mountain in complete black. Like, I couldn't have just quit and left and, you know, got in the car and left, because she knew she wasn't supposed to be back until the next morning, or at least until 6 o'clock. So kind of put myself in the corner in that regard. I had no option. I had no option but to continue forward. And on top of that, I knew that I made it this far. And there's a popular saying, I can't remember who popularized it, but it's, I didn't come this far to just come this far. And so that was kind of my mantra throughout that last run that we had to do. I was like, you know, I've endured this for 11 and a half hours. It would be an incredible shame to go this far and quit when you can see the finish line, when the finish line is right there. So I soldiered on. I did get lost. And luckily the people behind me caught up to me. So we kind of navigated the woods together. The trails weren't as distinctive as before, so to me it was kind of easy to get lost, but we eventually make it to the top of the mountain that we were at before. The crossroads that we came to that we didn't notice before, that I didn't notice before, where there were 3 paths. So we came in from a separate area that we came in from before, and from that separate area we had a path here, and a path to the left. Well, I was completely disoriented and I wasn't sure which way to go. So luckily, the guy that caught up to me, he had a GPS watch on, but his GPS watch tracked all that he did the entire night. So he was able to look back at it and it showed him which route to go. And that was the point that my friend messed up on. Was apparently the group that she was with had a guy that, you know, was adamant. He knew exactly where he was going and he took the wrong path, and it led him down the wrong side of the mountain and ultimately cost them the graduation at the very end. But to get back to where I was, me and this guy who expressed to me, you know, this wasn't his type of event either. I'm not a big endurance guy as far as that goes, so we kind of discussed that, and he was really concerned that he didn't have enough points to graduate. Midway through the night, they did say, if you don't have this many points, you know, you're really in trouble of not graduating. And I had above and beyond that much, so I wasn't as nervous as he was. We kind of really helped motivate each other. Like I said, I was completely gassed. I couldn't run. I was starting to get really sore, especially my knees. At the parts that he was walking at, you know, I would try to jog a little bit and have him keep up with me, and then I would have to stop. And, you know, he would go ahead of me, and he would help motivate me as well. So, you know, you really develop friendships in a sense of, you know, everybody wants everybody to succeed there. I can't remember the guy's name. I think his name was Brian. So I mean, it's not like somebody you're going to be well, you may make somebody that's a lifelong friend out there, but I mean, you're going to meet all kinds of people out there, and everybody is super supportive. So we get down to the bottom of the mountain at the very end of the night, and we had to do a couple menial tasks, you know, burpees here and there and things like that. So at the very end, the last thing that we had to do was the PT test, the PT test. And you just go out and do the best you can, and you really kind of see what your progress was throughout the night. I was able to perform as good or better only in the push-ups, I think, and the air squats. I could do the squats pretty good, but my sit-ups were terrible, and that last mile and a half with the ruck bag, I'm not gonna lie, I walked pretty much the majority of it. By that time, my hunger was really kicking in. That was probably the worst all night, was at the very end. It was probably 6:15. That was the last thing we did. And then we get to the end, and they're going through, and that's when they tell us, you know, we didn't mention it before, but this is what you had to get. This is the amount of points that you had to get to graduate. And graduate just means get the finisher medal and whatnot. And you had to complete all the tasks. And even at that point, the group that got lost on the mountain still hasn't returned. And so kind of in the middle of the leader going through her explanation, they run up, and before she mentioned the graduation part, you know, they finish and they think it's done, and then she kind of breaks the news to them. And you know, that's when my heart really sank for my friend, because I knew she was giving it her all the entire time, and she deserved to win. But going with what the leader was saying, to repeat myself, she was like, we do this to kind of reflect on life, and life isn't always going to be fair. You're going to have times where you feel lost, or times where you want to give up, or times where you feel like in the complete dark, and you have to find it within yourself to kind of persevere through those and really trust yourself to make the right decisions. And we really wanted to reflect that in the tasks and things that we give you. It's not here to make you feel inferior. It's really here to build you up, to really challenge you, like I said, physically and mentally. And she said something that, you know, really stuck with me. She was like, I do these not to administer pain to everybody, but I really love to see people grow. And that kind of really made me reflect on this channel and why I make it. I make these videos in order to influence people, as many people as I can, in any way that I can. I like seeing people succeed. That's why if you watch my videos, I'm constantly helping people on the course. I gladly run with anybody that, you know, is nervous to do a run for their first one or anything like that. I gladly run with them to help them kind of get rid of the butterflies. And in a way, they help me and help me grow mentally and personally. And so that really made me reflect on how to kind of approach this channel in the future. I'm really proud that I came up with the name, If I Can, You Can, to really reflect that, you know, I'm just an average guy. I just put in the work. I try to stay as disciplined as I can. Obviously, I'm not the best at that, and consistency is key. Something that I'm having to constantly work on, and you're never going to get to the point where you're just going to always be on it. Even people that do competitions and whatnot, they fall off. There will be a point where, you know, they just become unmotivated, and they have to kind of refine themselves and find their drive to continue going on. So with that being said, long story long, I guess it's not been a long story short, but I did graduate. I think I have a picture of the medal and whatnot. I really grew as a person. I grew internally. I was able to reflect on a lot of things when I was walking in the dark by myself especially, but I felt stronger. I did feel stronger physically, mentally at the end, and I did have the resolve that, you know, this was something that wasn't exactly for me. Didn't know that I would do it again. As of now, I'm not adamant about doing it again. However, that being said, if I had a friend, my friend Jessica that got disqualified, I'm sorry if I'm putting you on blast and you didn't want your name out there, but you're still badass and you kicked ass that night. But if she came up to me and was like, hey, you know, I really need you to do this 12-hour with me. I want to graduate this time. I would be there in a heartbeat. If any of you wanted to do one for the first time, like I said, I'd be there in a heartbeat. I'd go through the pain with you, there to motivate you as best as I could, and help you graduate and do the best that I could to get you across that finish line, because I think it is very important that people grow in life, in all aspects, financially, mentally, physically, emotionally, any way that you can. Growing is always better than regressing or even being stagnant. That's the only way you can really succeed in this world, is to become, you know, an all-around better person. So, long-winded, I guess. I know I ramble a lot and I apologize, but I hope my experience will help open your eyes. I went into it completely blind. I had no idea what to expect. I honestly thought it was just gonna be like an endurance race, like a Spartan race, but it has nothing to do with that really whatsoever. So keep that in mind if you're going through the hurricane heats. With that being said, pretty much the hurricane heats are almost the only things that they're offering at this moment. I think the regular races they're not offering again until after August. You know, if you want to do a Spartan event, it looks like Hurricane Heat is your best bet. They offer a 4-hour. I still would do that one. I'm pretty fine with that. I like the team aspect of it, and you know, the 4 hours compared to 12 hours obviously is a breeze, so I'm fine with that. And then in order to complete your endurance trifecta, they have a 24-hour. I'm considering it. It's not something I'm going to do in the immediate future, but it is something that I will consider down the road. If this information was helpful, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Keep in mind that major changes start with minor steps. Enjoy your run, get out there, do it, and we'll catch you in the next video.
That's good.